The truth that Korea was a Japanese colony. I emphasize the colony plunder of the Emperor Yonade, and the post-war Korean is apt to think that the severe rule was performed in Korea, but the fact is reversed at all. A then Korean receives Japanese overt production, and the historian telling it about Japan-Korea relations writes it down in History of Human of the 20th century if there is not the race which lived for a happinistic world's most. Truth of the merger, it had to protect Japan from invasion of Russia's China. The country called Korea does not have a meaning growth for Japan if I do not have you become independent. In the first place, I do not hope for exploitation of the wealth from the beginning because there were not resources in the Korean peninsula. Korea was a Chinese dependency for a long time. There were the royal families who governed the country, but they presented it to the Chinese imperial court, and the foreign policy looked up at the guidance in China. Older brother, Japan said it to a younger brother parent, Korea, China and Korea. In the Korean historical view, a Japanese is placed in rank of the rank that I had of foreign Korea below. There is thought to watch Japan below in Korea which assumes Confucianism basics. There is a trend to consider manual labor to be a vulgar person historically in Korea. Any craftsman that it was the high human being of the position not to labor in particular was detested in the Korean noble society and did a terrible slight. There was the custom that the craftsman looked down on as work of the humble origin in Korea, and it was done with a shame viewpoint same as the slave and the commoner of the bottom layer. Because it was respected a craftsman, as for the craftsman whom Japan brought from Korea, as for the Japanese, the craftsman stayed in Japan voluntarily. The reason is because it was comfortable. The foreigner who watched former Korea in the days of an emperor on a day records the then fact. Korea was the living environment which was extremely insanitary in every area from the farm village to city Seoul. In the first place, Korea was a much Chinese dependency for 1,000 years. Social position like the Chinese slave had Korea. The Briton writes it in this way. Then Korea is poor, and, without a currency system, there is neither the custom of the bathing nor the water service nor the school nor the police. Korea did not have a family name. There were many people who did not have even a name to filter family name or without it being allowed even for the slave rank to hold around half of the Korean population to have a family register. The House of Two Stories is not built for a capital, and the inhabitants live mainly in the ground of the way such as the maze. There is not the dignified temple which there is even in any kind of only Japanese town which is an ancient city here. I cross the water which drift to the excrement slowly while it is black, and the river which stagnated can have a bad smell to grind of a severe bad smell of the feces and urine in a pail from the houses of the alley and wash it. Japan fought against China and Russia from a Korean motive to be independent. The war was complete success. Japan gave Korea freedom, and the King of Korea got the Chinese Emperor, the Kaisership which set a shoulder beside the Japanese Emperor. Japan which won for Sino-Japanese War let approve Korean independence in Shimonoseki Treaty. The Injunjun that assassinated Hirobumi Ito and Hiro were criminals to filter. The Injunjun was said to have punished Ito by the Korean to prevent merger, but Hirobumi Ito was Korean merger dissenter. Merger was decided by the fault that Ito was assassinated of the dissenter. In other words, Ito assassination by the Injunjun accelerated merger. The reason why Japan annexed Korea in 1910 was that the Korean new emperor petitioned it. With the ability of current Korea race, I can hardly have honor as the independent nation. The destroying a country is desperate. The way relieving destroying a country has only merger. The Japanese merger ratified it with the approval of the countries such as USA or the UK legally. It was demanded the proposal of the Korean emperor who was the critical situation that seemed to be invaded by China and Russia, and Japan concluded the merger treaty that conformed to Korea and an international law. An internationalist concludes that the Korea merger is legal in this way. The Japanese financial burden reaches 30 million yen for 3 years to plan improvement of the Korean life. Central each department minister and prefectural governor appoint an all-Korean to respect Korean sovereignty to the last. Without doing that I am of use to a Japanese a little, and a Japanese is only the subordinate worker. It was common sense that the nation served the national defense expenditure, but a common nation was the golden handcuff which even 1 cent did not collect from Korea. The capital investment had a bigger Korea than Taiwan. The management of underground resources was supported by the assistance from the central government, too, and the annual expenditure was supported by filling by the center, too. A land tax was cheap in Korea, and a backspread system had the rice produced and stolen. It is from the Korea Governor General's office times that a modern system was introduced into Korea in earnest. The Japanese merger is evaluated as the best rule globally. Korea took over the debt from the foreign country which became the insolvency by waste. I brought up industry by Japanese technology and capital and largely grew it. I improved medical care and hygiene environment and extended the average lifespan drastically. I made the institutions such as an educational institution and the court of laws such as schools, water and sewage, a park, a hospital, a police station, a road, a hydroelectric power station, farmland, the railroad with Japanese national budget. The hospital Tae University which a Governor General's office established played a key role of the modern medical development of the Korean Peninsula. All energy was concentrated on the training of the doctor and the prevention of the epidemic. Medical facilities were got ready from each way to cities, towns and villages. Each city did of severe prevention of epidemics, quarantine inspection from 1910 and wrestled with prevention of invasion of the epidemic. With the abolition of the class system that continued since the Rhee dynasty, it came to be suffered a modern medical benefit in the lowly people. The Hangul alphabet is establishment by the King Sejong the Great of Korea, but what was taught by all nations is after it is it in the Emperor time zone a day. I built the modern elementary school of 5,000 for Japanese money in the whole Korea and let you learn the Hangul alphabet. Thereafter I adopted the education of the Hangul alphabet looked down upon by Yang Van at school and promoted revival of the traditional culture in the days of the Rhee dynasty. Not only I let you do a systematization and spread a sentence, I founded a new family register system, and even a family register gave the servant who occupied around half of the population that was not forgiven a family name. In the first place the ancient Korean used a totally different name now, but changes my name to China type. The city that I was full of feces and urine, and was the world's dirtiest, and the said soul changed into the beautiful modern town. The Korean criticizes Japan, but it is the delusions that are not reasonable such as exploitation, plunder, the slaughter of the emperor on a day. One day I was big, and, judging from a conclusion, it contributed to the prosperity of Korea race of the Korean Peninsula for fact misconception because of the ignorance for emperor 36 years. Japan went and I performed a vast fund and technology and human support and was able to be brought up in Korea by a piercing effort from merger of 1910 to 1945. I brought large development in 35 years. Korea was advancing from the Dark Age by Japanese protection in the civilization times and avoided it from old misgovernment and accomplished progress in every aspect. When a lot of improvement winning local praise by Japan was realized, the historian writes it. The researcher knows a right historic fact in this way. Even if Korea makes it made with a modern nation, it is the nation which grew up while being dependent on Japan. But though there is such a big favor out of the pride of Korea race, I insist when it is a forgery distortion by Japan and never recognize such a fact.